Part 10. It was precisely 12 o'clock, 12 by Big Ben, whose stroke was wafted over the northern part of London, blent with that of other clocks, mixed in a thin ethereal way with the clouds and wisps of smoke, and died up there among the seagulls. 12 o'clock struck as Clarissa Dalloway laid her green dress on her bed, and the Warren Smiths walked down Harley Street. 12 was the hour of their appointment. Probably, Retsia thought, that was Sir William Bradshaw's house with the grey motor car in front of it. The leaden circles dissolved in the air. Indeed it was Sir William Bradshaw's motor car, low, powerful, grey, with plain initials interlocked on the panel, as if the pomps of heraldry were incongruous, this man being the ghostly helper, the priest of science. And as the motor car was grey, so, to match its sober suavity, grey furs, silver grey rugs were heaped in it to keep her ladyship warm while she waited. For often Sir William would travel 60 miles or more down into the country to visit the rich, the afflicted who could afford the very large fee which Sir William very properly charged for his advice. Her ladyship waited with the rugs about her knees an hour or more, leaning back, thinking sometimes of the patient, sometimes exclusively of the wall of gold mounting minute by minute while she waited, the wall of gold that was mounting between them and all shifts and anxieties. She had borne them bravely, they had had their struggles, until she felt wedged on a calm ocean, where only spice winds blow, respected, admired, envied, with scarcely anything left to wish for, though she regretted her stoutness, late dinner parties every Thursday night to the profession, an occasional bazaar to be opened, royalty greeted, too little time, alas, with her husband, whose work grew and grew, a boy doing well at Eton, she would have liked a daughter too. Interests she had, however, in plenty, child welfare, the aftercare of the epileptic, and photography, so that if there was a church building or a church decaying, she bribed the sexton, got the key, and took photographs, which were scarcely to be distinguished from the work of professionals, while she waited. Sir William himself was no longer young. He had worked very hard. He had won his position by sheer ability, being the son of a shopkeeper, loved his profession, made a fine figurehead at ceremonies, and spoke well, all of which had by the time he was knighted given him a heavy look, a weary look, the stream of patients being so incessant, the responsibilities and privileges of his profession so onerous, which weariness, together with his grey hairs, increased the extraordinary distinction of his presence and gave him the reputation of the most importance in dealing with nerve cases, not merely of lightning skill and almost infallible accuracy in diagnosis, but of sympathy, tact, understanding of the human soul. He could see the first moment they came into the room, the Warren Smiths they were called. He was certain directly he saw the man. It was a case of extreme gravity. It was a case of complete breakdown, complete physical and nervous breakdown, with every symptom in an advanced stage, he ascertained in 2 or 3 minutes, writing answers to questions murmured discreetly on a pink card. How long had Dr. Holmes been attending him? 6 weeks. Prescribed a little bromide? Said there was nothing the matter? Ah, yes, those general practitioners, thought Sir William. It took half his time to undo their blunders. Some were irreparable. You served with great distinction in the war? The patient repeated the word war interrogatively. He was attaching meanings to words of a symbolical kind, a serious symptom to be noted on the card. The war? The patient asked. The European war, that little shindy of schoolboys with gunpowder, had he served with distinction? He really forgot. In the war itself he had failed. Yes, he served with the greatest distinction, Retzia assured the doctor. He was promoted. "And they have the very highest opinion of you at your office?" Sir William murmured, glancing at Mr. Brewer's very generously worded letter. "So that you have nothing to worry you? No financial anxiety? Nothing?" He had committed an appalling crime, and had been condemned to death by human nature. I have, he began, committed a crime." "He has done nothing wrong whatever," Retzia assured the doctor. "If Mr. Smith would wait," said Sir William, "he would speak to Mrs. Smith in the next room." "Her husband was very seriously ill," Sir William said. "Did he threaten to kill himself?" "Oh, he did!" she cried. "But he did not mean it," she said. "Of course not. It was merely a question of rest," said Sir William. "Of rest, rest, rest. A long rest in bed. There was a delightful home down in the country where her husband would be perfectly looked after." "Away from her?" she asked. "Unfortunately, yes. The people we care for most are not good for us when we are ill. But he was not mad, was he?" Sir William said he never spoke of madness. He called it not having a sense of proportion. But her husband did not like doctors. He would refuse to go there. Shortly and kindly Sir William explained to her the state of the case. He had threatened to kill himself. There was no alternative. It was a question of law. He would lie in bed in a beautiful house in the country. The nurses were admirable. Sir William would visit him once a week. If Mrs. Warren Smith was quite sure she had no more questions to ask, he never hurried his patients, they would return to her husband. She had nothing more to ask, not of Sir William. So they returned to the most exalted of mankind, the criminal who faced his judges, the victim exposed on the heights, the fugitive, the drowned sailor, the poet of the immortal ode, the lord who had gone from life to death, to Septimus Warren Smith, who sat in an armchair under the skylights staring at a photograph of Lady Bradshaw in court dress, muttering messages about beauty. "We have had our little talk," said Sir William. "He says you are very, very ill," Retzia cried. "We have been arranging that you should go into a home," said Sir William. "One of Holmes's homes?" sneered Septimus. The fellow made a distasteful impression, for there was in Sir William, whose father had been a tradesman, a natural respect for breeding and clothing, which shabbiness nettled. Again, more profoundly, there was in Sir William, who had never had time for reading, a grudge deeply buried against cultivated people who came into his room and intimated that doctors, whose profession is a constant strain upon all the highest faculties, are not educated men. "One of my homes, Mr. Warren Smith," he said, "where we will teach you to rest." And there was just one thing more. He was quite certain that when Mr. Warren Smith was well he was the last man in the world to frighten his wife, but he had talked of killing himself. "We all have our moments of depression," said Sir William. "Once you fall," Septimus repeated to himself, "human nature is on you. Holmes and Bradshaw are on you. They scour the desert. They fly screaming into the wilderness. The rack and the thumbscrew are applied. Human nature is remorseless." "Impulses came upon him sometimes?" Sir William asked with his pencil on a pink card. "That was his own affair," said Septimus. "Nobody lives for himself alone," said Sir William, glancing at the photograph of his wife in court dress. "And you have a brilliant career before you," said Sir William. There was Mr. Brewer's letter on the table. An exceptionally brilliant career. But if he confessed, if he communicated, would they let him off then, his torturers? I, he stammered. But what was his crime? He could not remember it. Yes, Sir William encouraged him, but it was growing late. Love, trees, there is no crime. What was his message? He could not remember it. I, Septimus stammered. Try to think as little about yourself as possible, said Sir William kindly. Really, he was not fit to be about. Was there anything else they wished to ask him? Sir William would make all the arrangements, he murmured to Retsia, and he would let her know between 5 and 6 that evening, he murmured. Trust everything to me, he said, and dismissed them. Never, never had Retsia felt such agony in her life. She had asked for help and been deserted. He had failed them. Sir William Bradshaw was not a nice man. The upkeep of that motor car alone must cost him quite a lot, said Septimus when they got out onto the street. She clung to his arm. They had been deserted. But what more did she want? To his patients he gave 3/4 of an hour, and if in this exacting science, which has to do with what, after all, we know nothing about, the nervous system, the human brain, a doctor loses his sense of proportion, as a doctor he fails. Health we must have, and health is proportion, so that when a man comes into your room and says he is Christ, a common delusion, and has a message, as they mostly have, and threatens, as they often do, to kill himself, you invoke proportion, order rest in bed, rest in solitude, silence and rest, rest without friends, without books, without messages, 6 months' rest, until a man who went in weighing 7 stone 6 comes out weighing 12. Proportion, divine proportion, Sir William's goddess, was acquired by Sir William walking hospitals, catching salmon, begetting one son in Harley Street by Lady Bradshaw, who caught salmon herself and took photographs scarcely to be distinguished from the work of professionals. Worshipping proportion, Sir William not only prospered himself, but made England prosper, secluded her lunatics, forbade childbirth, penalized despair, made it impossible for the unfit to propagate their views until they, too, shared his sense of proportion. His, if they were men, Lady Bradshaw's, if they were women. She embroidered, knitted, spent 4 nights out of 7 at home with her son. So that not only did his colleagues respect him, his subordinates fear him, but the friends and relations of his patients felt for him the keenest gratitude for insisting that these prophetic Christs and Christesses, who prophesied the end of the world, or the advent of God, should drink milk in bed as Sir William ordered. Sir William, with his 30 years' experience of these kinds of cases, and his infallible instinct, this is madness, this sense, in fact, his sense of proportion. But proportion has a sister, less smiling, more formidable, a goddess even now engaged in the heat and sands of India, the mud and swamp of Africa, the purlieus of London, whether, in short, the climate or the devil tempts men to fall from the true belief which is her own. A goddess even now engaged in dashing down shrines, smashing idols, and setting up in their place her own stern countenance. Conversion is her name, and she feasts on the wills of the weakly, loving to impress, to impose, adoring her own features stamped on the face of the populace. At Hyde Park Corner on a tub she stands preaching, shrouds herself in white, and walks penitentially disguised as brotherly love through factories and parliaments, offers help but desires power, smites out of her way roughly the dissentient or dissatisfied, bestows her blessing on those who, looking upward, catch submissively from her eyes the light of their own. This lady, too, Retsia Warren Smith divined it, had her dwelling in Sir William's heart, though concealed, as she mostly is, under some plausible disguise, some venerable name, love, duty, self-sacrifice, how he would work, how toil to raise funds, propagate reforms, initiate institutions. But conversion, fastidious goddess, loves blood better than brick, and feasts most subtly on the human will. For example, Lady Bradshaw. 15 years ago she had gone under. It was nothing you could put your finger on. There had been no scene, no snap, only the slow sinking, waterlogged, of her will into his. Sweet was her smile, swift her submission. Dinner in Harley Street, numbering 8 or 9 courses, feeding 10 or 15 guests of the professional classes, was smooth and urbane. Only as the evening wore on, a very slight dullness, or uneasiness perhaps, a nervous twitch, fumble, stumble, and confusion indicated what it was really painful to believe, that the poor lady lied. Once, long ago, she had caught salmon freely. Now, quick to minister to the craving which lit her husband's eye for dominion, for power, she cramped, squeezed, pared, pruned, drew back, peeped through, so that without knowing precisely what made the evening disagreeable and caused this pressure on the top of the head, which might well be imputed to the professional conversation, or the fatigue of a great doctor, whose life, Lady Bradshaw said, is not his own, but his patient's. Disagreeable it was, so that guests, when the clock struck 10, breathed in the air of Harley Street even with rapture, which relief, however, was denied to his patients. There in the grey room, with the pictures on the wall and the valuable furniture, under the ground glass skylight, they learnt the extent of their transgressions. Huddled up in armchairs, they watched him go through, for their benefit, a curious exercise with the arms, which he shot out, brought sharply back to his hip, to prove, if the patient was obstinate, that Sir William was master of his own actions, which the patient was not. There some weakly broke down, sobbed, submitted. Others, inspired by heaven knows what intemperate madness, called Sir William to his face a damnable humbug, questioned, even more impiously, life itself. Why live, they demanded. Sir William replied that life was good. Certainly, Lady Bradshaw in ostrich feathers hung over the mantelpiece, and as for his income, it was quite 12,000 a year. But to us, they protested, life has given no such bounty. He acquiesced. They lacked a sense of proportion. And perhaps, after all, there is no God. He shrugged his shoulders. In short, this living or not living is an affair of our own. But there they were mistaken. Sir William had a friend in Surrey where they taught, what Sir William frankly admitted was a difficult art, a sense of proportion. There were, moreover, family affection, honour, courage, and a brilliant career. All of these had in Sir William a resolute champion. If they failed him, he had to support police and the good of society, which, he remarked very quietly, would take care, down in Surrey, that these unsocial impulses, bred more than anything by the lack of good blood, were held in control, and then stole out from her hiding place and mounted her throne that goddess whose lust is to override opposition, to stamp indelibly in the sanctuaries of others the image of herself. Naked, defenceless, the exhausted, the friendless receive the impress of Sir William's will. He swooped, he devoured, he shut people up. It was this combination of decision and humanity that endeared Sir William so greatly to the relations of his victims. But Retzia Warren Smith cried, walking down Harley Street, that she did not like that man.